Dan, don't you agree that the truth, if only a pinch, must season every falsehood, or the palate fucking rebels? And mustn't the novice chef be mindful not to ladle out his concoction by the unseasoned fucking tongue, lest before he perfect his art, he lose his clientele?
It's safe to say that the language of HBO's Deadwood is deserving of the moniker labyrinthine. With its twists and turns of motivated exposition concerning plot and character, the circumambulatory tangents about life in the Wild West, and the not-so-occasional divergences down pathways of the strictly profane, it's easy to see why the series garnered a cult following after its premature cancellation in 2006. I was too young to watch Deadwood when it aired in the early 2000s, and in the subsequent years, as popular streaming services gave rise to a renaissance for older TV shows by allowing newer audiences to discover hidden gems in uninterrupted, bingeable servings, I must admit I wrote the show off as just another Western. But I have since renounced my heathen ways, and am now here to preach the good gospel. Deadwood is a Western, without a doubt, exploring themes of community and order, emerging from the lawless chaos of the real historical town of Deadwood, set in the Black Hills of the yet-to-be-annexed territory of the Dakotas in the 1870s. And while the show certainly deals in tropes that satisfy the obligations of a Western for fans of the genre, this is only the window dressing that lures the audience in, where once inside, they are treated to a style unlike any other show on television, and this is largely due to the richness of Deadwood's language that at times reaches almost Shakespearean heights.
I know that there are audience members who initially, when they were introduced to the show, found it difficult to get involved because of the thickness of the language.
Yeah.
And yet I find that one of the most stimulating aspects of it.
And also the obscenity.
Cocksucker! Cocksucker! San Francisco!
Jesus fucking Christ. All right, there's an invisible cocksucker next to you, and he's from San Francisco.
Series creator, writer, and producer David Milch clearly recognizes the dynamic effect language has on the audience when telling a story. But I think the true power of a show like Deadwood comes not so much from the specific word choices themselves, as it does from the order in which they're presented. In this regard, Milch and his writer's room proved themselves masters of the mechanics of delay, as well as artists who respect their audience enough never to hold their hand, at times forcing them to sit in states of uncomfortable yet curious ignorance until a line or speech's meaning is fully made clear, a technique we can see used in several of Milch's other works.
I'm here on orders from my bird. If you're waiting for me to ask you what you're talking about, plan on falling over dead before I do.
While Deadwood is not the only story that takes advantage of this incredibly useful technique, it is, in my opinion, one of the best. And so what I want to do in this video is analyze a few ways in which Deadwood intentionally delays meaning in order to create intrigue and engagement from the audience, as well as vary the rhythm within and between scenes. Watching seasons 1 through 3, as well as the long-awaited 2019 movie follow-up to this series, has given me a great number of lessons to apply to my own writing, and I hope it can do the same for you, whether you're working on a novel, short story, or a screenplay. So without further ado, let's look at the dialogue of Deadwood and the mechanics of delay. Alright, so I kind of lied. Before we can jump straight into Deadwood's dialogue, we need just a quick grammar review. But hey, this is a video all about delay, right? So...
What's your fucking rush?
Whether spoken in dialogue or written out in prose, all sentences at their core contain a basic underlying proposition. Roses are red, the dog barked, the book fell from the shelf. The order in which a sentence delivers its propositional content creates an emotional effect on the listener or reader. Most familiar to us are sentences that employ a loose syntax, where the subject and verb come early. We can then enhance and embellish such sentences by adding supplemental subordinate propositions to the base clause in an ever-growing branch of cumulative information. With these sentences, we get a basic understanding of the propositional content early, and then we can sit back as extraneous details color or modify our understanding of the base clause. Roses are red, though white or yellow petals are not uncommon to many species. The dog barked, determined to scare away the troublesome squirrels outside the window. The book fell from the shelf, knocking over a flower pot and turning over the fishbowl before landing on the ground with a dull thud. But other sentences withhold their core propositions until later, sometimes even up to the period at the very end, and for this reason utilize what's known as periodic or suspensive syntax.
No, hold back. Save it. Build to that.
With these sentences, we are left in suspense as we take in different bits of information without knowing exactly how it all fits together until we finally get the propositional payoff that gives everything that came before its full meaning. If you like Southern comfort food and you don't mind waiting for a table, you'll want to try this new barbecue place. As far as the state of California is concerned, pending a lengthy appeal process, he's not allowed to operate a Class D vehicle. To be a professional writer is to be in control of the effect the order of your syntax creates in the audience. Normally, if a line contains important or dramatic information, you want to structure the sentence in a way that pushes that propositional information to the very end. This is standard practice in screenwriting, as film is an auditory as well as visual medium, using real actors who have to react to what the other characters say. It would feel unnatural to watch character A politely wait their turn while character B finishes speaking if what should cause a reaction in character A comes early in the spoken dialogue. And even though this guideline mostly applies to screenwriters, I think novelists and short story writers can also benefit from analyzing the order in which propositional content is delivered to see how the audience experiences a given sentence. Compare this line from The Dark Knight Rises, rearranged into loose syntax.
You have my permission to die, and then we will destroy Gotham.
To its original suspensive syntax.
We will destroy Gotham, and then, when it is done, and Gotham is ashes, then you have my permission to die.
The loose syntax version delivers all its power up front and then peters out, whereas here the keyword of the line is placed all the way at the very end, giving this line its dramatic punch. So where we place words in a sentence is very important. In general, a base clause holds 3 slots into which we can drop in modifying information. For instance, let's take a simple sentence like, "The fox jumped over the log and disappeared into the trees." Now let's add some modifying information about the fox's behavior in the initial slot. Without so much as a glance back, the fox jumped over the log and disappeared into the trees. But we could also move this information to the final slot. The fox jumped over the log and disappeared into the trees without so much as a glance back. Or we could put the information in the medial slot, usually occurring between the subject and the verb. The fox, without so much as a glance back, jumped over the log and disappeared into the trees. It's easy to imagine that too much information loaded into the initial or medial slot of a clause runs the risk of alienating or losing audiences, because we don't yet have a full thought to latch onto as more and more information is thrown our way. But Deadwood seems to consciously cram its lines of dialogue with cumulative modifying phrases in a manner that interrupts the basic propositions of otherwise fairly straightforward sentences, thereby delaying their full meaning until the very end. And this style occurs throughout Deadwood by just about every character, not only the most eloquent speakers, whether those characters are thinking out loud.
A man, as it happens, a rival of mine, learning the secret of a great man's lieutenant, would make that lieutenant his slave.
Insulting one another.
It must cost you sleep. The guests you drive off, the chances of thieving and bilking you lose, needing to rub against your betters.
Exaggerating their sense of importance.
Sir, you have my word as eyewitness to the rest. And I suppose this wound as added proof for the doctors. They fear to cripple me in the hand I used to write. I will take the murderer's bullet to my grave.
even delivering exposition, always motivated, of course.
Them stuffed envelopes for those cunts of the legislature. Passed smoothing the road for the camp's annexation. They were supposed to clear up a personal situation, but that letter you bore from the magistrate explained my situation would need additional envelopes.
And it is this effect which gives Deadwood the thick texture that characterizes the language of the show. Usually, the illuminating context which grants a sentence its coherence and dramatic weight is saved until the very end, and often the sentence will take its sweet time getting there, stopping to smell the rhetorical roses along the way. The audience is being asked not to suspend their disbelief, but their attention, making them active participants in each scene as they string together the various propositional content into a comprehensible whole. We're constantly looking back on what just came before with fresh eyes as each additional piece of information sheds further light on the full meaning of the text. And this technique doesn't stop at the level of the sentence either. We can scale this concept of delayed meaning up to the level of the paragraph. If a character speaks uninterrupted for 4 or 5 sentences in a row, what would happen if we were to delay the illuminating context until the final line? Rather than being alienating, the paragraph might make audiences lean forward in their seats, asking, "What is the character talking about here?" Or, "What do they mean?" before that final aha moment is delivered. Let's take a look at a single scene between Dan and Trixie that contains 2 back-to-back examples of this technique.
Your creature walking around on hind legs. Just like Crop Ear, them half-dozen bushwhackers out in the forest. Ones I'd fall in with or out, whatever suited my daily purpose.
Confused? Don't worry, you're not meant to understand Dan's full meaning of this speech yet, but hopefully your mind is racing with ideas, anxiously trying to fill in the gaps and make sense of it all, since that's what our brains are fundamentally wired to do. Once Dan delivers the punchline of the paragraph, we mentally retrace everything that came before, and suddenly the meaning washes over us in a satisfying wave of understanding.
That's what I was, till I crossed paths with Al.
Only with this final line do we now have the missing puzzle piece to understand that before Dan met Al, he felt like some animal lost in the woods, surviving without any purpose or direction in his life. Dan's sentences here are not long-winded and meandering. They're short, even fragmented pieces of larger ideas. But the order in which the paragraph itself is structured suspends the illuminating contextual line until the very end, just like the suspensive sentences we looked at earlier. Notice, too, the final line of delayed meaning didn't contain some monumental plot twist revelation that we normally associate with big reveals in dramatic storytelling, a secret pregnancy, a killer on the loose, or someone coming back from the dead. It was a simple paragraph of a character expressing his inner feelings, but it was made all the more impactful and sustained our interest through its careful ordering of how the information was revealed to the audience. And we can also delay meaning across multiple lines of dialogue spoken between 2 or more characters. Let's take a look at an even simpler example from the very same scene.
Say you'll burn it down with me, Dan.
What?
Like Dan, we too are asking what Trixie means when she asks him to burn it down with her.
This fucking place. If we're letting Tolliver take it over.
Done.
And just as soon as the question is posed, we're given our answer. The it in her previous line we now understand is Deadwood itself. Again, not a major revelation as far as the entirety of the series is concerned, but by delaying the full meaning of Trixie's request, even so slightly, the story engages the audience by inviting their minds to race ahead and fill in the gaps, a level of engagement perhaps not achieved had the meaning been spoon-fed to the audience.
Say you'll burn this fucking place down with me, Dan.
Done.
And once more, this technique doesn't have to end at the level of the paragraph. Everything we've discussed so far can be scaled up another level to cover the breadth of an entire scene within a story. This would involve leaving the audience in the dark, so to speak, for the majority of a scene's running time before its conclusion casts the earlier moments in a new light. This doesn't mean you have license to write an incoherent mess and then slap an explanatory epilogue onto the scene, but it is to say that if you give the audience enough of the bizarre, the funny, or the mysterious up front, they'll be willing to walk down the road with your scene for a while without knowing fully what it all means. In fact, it will likely intrigue them more. For this example, we must turn to none other than Deadwood's incumbent mayor and hotel proprietor, E.B. Farnham.
Madam, in the chambers of my heart beats a love for every crooked timber of this shitbox of a structure. This building, its warped floorboards and Why, even in Richardson, my chef, my eyes see a beloved household pet, somehow walking upright. See in Richardson a half-witted child, nonetheless adored. Oh, Mrs. Garrett, the very subject of my thoughts.
What was E.B. talking about? What was the purpose of all those lines? Aren't all scenes supposed to have conflict front and center to be interesting? If upon first viewing you're struggling to uncover what's going on, rest assured you're in good company, as this scene intentionally obscures its meaning. So much so, in fact, that E.B.'s entire monologue gets interrupted by Mrs. Garrett's sudden entrance and request that E.B. lend his cook to escort her across the thoroughfare, which E.B. grants, along with some harsh words for poor Richardson. So what's going on? It almost feels as though the scene lost its way and got distracted by a new storyline that shoved aside the original monologue about floorboards and chambers of the heart. But once Mrs. Garrett and Richardson exit the scene, E.B. picks up where he left off.
Therefore, madam, as to your generous offer to purchase my hotel, I must gratefully decline.
And suddenly we are made to understand that the same Mrs. Garrett of this scene has previously offered to buy the hotel from E.B., that this has him internally conflicted about letting the beloved property go, that he's practicing giving her his answer, and that he's finally made up his mind to say no. And we learn this in a final suspensive periodic sentence to close an entirely suspensive and periodic scene. It really doesn't get more delayed than that. So, those are 3 levels of analysis in which utilizing the mechanics of delay can pull the audience deeper into the telling of a story. Suspensive or periodic syntax is only one of the many techniques a show like Deadwood employs to tell its sprawling story, but I think it's one that's too frequently missing in other popular works. I hope this video has been helpful to any aspiring or veteran storytellers looking to better understand the craft, and I'd love to hear any questions or comments about other areas you might want this channel to explore. Until next time, happy writing.
How are you going to go at Hearst?
Why, Dan?
By composing my thoughts, tropes, and gambits for the talk between us that is yet to come.